Unbelievable, Charles. And this is just in the early morning before the first witness even takes the stand. How would you describe this morning?
This is not the start that you want if you're Donald Trump or his defense attorneys. And quite frankly, Jose, I've been talking to a number of us on the panel, and I'm surprised that Todd Blanche, being as accomplished an attorney as he is, did not have a better explanation and response for some of the questions that Judge Marchand has thrown at him. These are not necessarily complicated things. And while I understand that you are primarily focused on Donald Trump and his defense at trial, you've had several days to put together a plausible argument as to why you should be able to win this hearing against the prosecution and their motion. And the examples for, in the instance of he was responding to Stormy Daniels, you could have easily put together a few tweets if, in fact, this was the answer that you plan to give. And so, quite frankly, I'm surprised. This is not a good thing. And the fact that the judge has said you're losing credibility.
All right, people, Dr. John here. So what just happened, guys? The Attorney General is being publicly humiliated in multiple courtrooms, with judges openly questioning his credibility and accusing him of abusing the system. The president's legal strategy is collapsing in real time. Now, to make matters infinitely worse for the president and his legal team, a critical witness in one of the biggest cases against him just flipped, completely switched sides, walked into the prosecutor's office and said, "I was wrong before. I lied. The truth is what the prosecutors are saying." This witness was supposed to be a pillar of Trump's defense, someone who would back up the narrative, someone who would say the president was right and the prosecutors were wrong. Instead, that same person recanted everything, admitted to giving false testimony, and is now providing prosecutors with damaging information that implicates Trump and his co-defendants.
As a defense attorney, as a trial attorney, this early in a trial is not somewhere you want to be.
I mean, what do you say if you are Trump's attorney and the judge is asking you for specifics about a gag order that was very clearly written and specified?
You have to have the answers. I mean, there really is no excuse for walking into court unprepared. One thing I never heard in all my years as a prosecutor from any judge, many of whom disagreed with me or denied my motions, was that I was losing credibility with the court. And that is a dagger for anybody in a court of law. And if you lose your credibility, Jose, it's very, very hard to get it back. And by the way, you may need it at the end. And so, I don't envy Mr. Blanche for a number of reasons. He should, not just he, anybody walking into court should be prepared. I don't think it was that difficult to anticipate what the questions might be. There weren't that many tweets at issue.
This witness flip sent shockwaves through Trump's entire legal operation. It forced them to scramble, to change strategy midstream, to reassess everything they thought they knew. It exposed how fundamentally shaky their defense was, how it was built on sand, on assumptions that were never true, on testimony that was never reliable. Let me give you the full picture of what's actually happening here, because the spin on this is going to be intense. Todd Blanche, who was Trump's personal defense lawyer fighting for him in criminal court, is now the acting Attorney General of the United States. Think about that transition for a moment. He went from being one lawyer in one courtroom defending one client to running the entire Justice Department, controlling thousands of prosecutors across the country, holding the most.
They were all, posted in some way. As Mr. Trump's lawyer, it's your obligation to know that and to be able to explain it. You might lose, but you don't want to lose and lose your credibility.
I'm just wondering, just the four of you that have vast experience, do you recall a time or more than once where a judge early on in a case said to one of the litigants, either the defense or the prosecution, "You are losing credibility with this court"? Early on. Do any of you remember that happening?
I've seen judges admonish attorneys. I've seen the body language and all of the indicia of that being the sentiment, but never have I heard it expressly said, you're losing credibility. I've heard this is not a plausible argument. I'm suspect. These
yeah, but that's different than
arguments,
stating. That's different than a judge stating, when everybody is under, they're under the judicial proceedings underway, to say you are losing credibility. What do you see there?
Powerful legal position in the federal government. That's not a promotion. That's a complete transformation of power and authority. When Trump made that decision, when he put his personal lawyer in charge of the Justice Department, the expectation was obvious. Trump's legal problems would disappear. The Justice Department would protect him. Federal resources would be used to shield him. The system would finally work in his favor the way he always wanted it to. That's what you logically expect when the president installs his own defense attorney as the nation's top law enforcement officer. But reality has delivered something completely different. Instead of using his power to help Trump,
oh man, that is definitely reputationally damaging. I have never seen it happen to a colleague or an opposing counsel or myself, and I'm thankful that I haven't. But it can be really detrimental to one's reputation. But the thing about it too, I think not only the comment, but to say it in front of one's client is equally as damaging. And obviously the client in this case is Trump, but my goodness, can you imagine how much, even though Todd Blanche is a well-respected attorney, having your client hear you be admonished in that way by the court has got to diminish your ability to think, oh my goodness, I've selected the right attorney. And that's
what does Blanche and the rest of the team do now, and what are they thinking on how they overcome this very clear obstacle? I mean, from the bench, the judge says you are losing credibility.
If I were them, I would probably be trying to pull together some sort of letter to the judge, something else to basically say, look, Your Honor, based on the things that you said in court.
Blanche keeps getting embarrassed publicly. He keeps getting dismantled by judges. He keeps losing in court. His credibility keeps getting shredded. In the New York hush money case, Judge Juan Merchan repeatedly tore him apart. The judge basically said Blanche's legal positions were unserious, that they didn't make sense, that they weren't backed by law. In the classified documents case, other judges slammed Blanche for delay tactics and for making misconduct claims without evidence. And most recently, as Attorney General, Blanche got called out by a federal magistrate judge for violating a sealing order, for breaking court rules, for doing something judges explicitly told him not to do. This is not how things were supposed to go. You put your loyalist in charge of the Justice Department, and suddenly the legal tide is supposed to turn. But instead, it's getting worse.
Here are some other things that we've brought to bear to try to kind of repair the damage. It's damage control time. Because what happens when you're losing, it's reputation overall, fine. Todd Blanche has kind of made his bet that he's riding on the Trump train now, and that's his decision. Reputationally, that opens up a whole lot of things that aren't worth talking about right now. What does it mean in the context of this case? Every time he stands up to object, he's now got less credibility. Every time that there's anything that comes up with a piece of evidence, he's going to have less credibility. If this gets to a conviction and then we're in a sentencing phase, he's going to have less credibility. And none of those things are good. All of those things are bad. And so he's got to get into damage control quick.
So, Kristen, the judge is saying that he's going to reserve a decision on gag order violations and what to do about it. What do you think about that?
I think it's going to be tough because if he doesn't make a decision right away, it really runs the risk of Trump continuing to engage in potentially violative behavior. But again, judges are regular people. He now has heard the arguments.
The walls are closing in. Witnesses are flipping. Judges are openly questioning Blanche's fitness to serve. And Blanche himself is retreating from his own arguments because he literally cannot defend them with facts or law anymore. The whole strategy is falling apart in real time. Let's go back to the beginning of this story because it really starts with Blanche as Trump's defense lawyer before he became Attorney General, back when he was just another attorney trying to keep Trump out of prison. The New York hush money case was the big one. This was Trump facing criminal charges in Manhattan, the trial that actually happened, the one that went to a jury, the one that resulted in a conviction. Blanche was leading the defense, and it was a disaster from the start. At one hearing about gag orders and contempt charges, Judge Merchan completely destroyed Blanche's arguments. He took him apart piece by piece in open court. The judge told Blanche directly, "You're losing all credibility. Not, you're wrong about this argument. Not, you've misinterpreted this law. You're losing all credibility. Full stop. That's a judge saying he doesn't believe a single thing you say anymore. That's a judge telling the entire courtroom that your word means nothing. That's devastating for any lawyer, but especially for someone who is supposed to be the top lawyer in the country. Blanche tried to defend Trump's attacks on witnesses. Trump had been going after Stormy Daniels and Michael Cohen on social media, making public statements about them, criticizing them, basically trying to intimidate them through public pressure. And Blanche tried to argue that these attacks were just political speech, that they were protected by the First Amendment, that Trump had a constitutional right to say whatever he wanted. But Judge Merchan looked at Blanche and basically said, "That's not serious. That doesn't work. You know better than this, because gag orders exist for a reason. They exist to prevent witness intimidation. They exist to protect the integrity of the trial process. Trump was violating the gag order, and Blanche was trying to pretend he wasn't, but Blanche was stuck. He couldn't argue what was actually true. He couldn't say Trump was wrong to attack witnesses. He couldn't say Trump should follow court orders. He had to defend Trump's behavior, no matter how indefensible it was, and he couldn't do it convincingly. Conservative lawyer George Conway, who knows what he's talking about when it comes to legal arguments, said Blanche had nothing substantive to say in Trump's defense. Nothing. Zero substantive arguments. Conway said Blanche was defending a client who cannot be controlled, a client who won't listen to his lawyers, a client who insists on doing things that violate court orders, a client who creates impossible situations. Another attorney said the same thing. Blanche's arguments don't make sense because Trump won't stop doing the things he's been ordered not to do. That's the fundamental problem. Trump wants to argue his version of reality, not what the law actually says. He wants to attack his enemies, not follow court rules. He wants to win at any cost, even when winning requires breaking the rules. And Blanche is the one who has to try to make that work in a courtroom, and he can't. Then there were the delay tactics. Blanche came before Judge Merchan and tried to get the New York case delayed, tried to get it dismissed, tried to get it postponed. He claimed there was misconduct by prosecutors, that they had done something incredibly serious, that the case should be delayed while these allegations were investigated. But when the judge actually looked into it, when Merchan examined the evidence, he found that Blanche had provided scant evidence. Scant means almost nothing. The judge said Blanche was making big claims, but wasn't backing them up. The judge subjected Blanche to what was described as withering questioning, harsh, brutal, devastating questioning that essentially said, "You're making these claims, but where's your proof?" To make it worse, Blanche had waited weeks to tell the judge about documents he claimed proved misconduct. He sat on them. He delayed sharing them. And then when he finally mentioned them, he tried to use them as a basis to delay the entire trial. The judge was furious. "Why didn't you tell me about these weeks ago? Why are you suddenly claiming they're so serious that we need to delay everything?" It looked exactly like what it was. Gamesmanship, delay tactics, trying to gum up the works so Trump could avoid trial. And then there was the jail remark. During closing arguments in May, Blanche told jurors that Trump could go to jail if convicted, that he would face prison time. But that's not a fact. That's speculation about something only the judge can decide. Jurors are not supposed to think about punishment. They're supposed to think about guilt or innocence. That's it. The judge quickly rebuked Blanche, called it outrageous, called it highly inappropriate. The judge said Blanche is an experienced attorney who knows better. He knows you can't say those things to a jury. The judge said it was simply not allowed to mislead jurors about sentencing. And the judge said it's hard to imagine how that was accidental. Hard to imagine it was a mistake. In other words, the judge was saying, you knew better. You knew you weren't allowed to say this. You said it anyway. Why? That's the kind of thing that destroys a lawyer's credibility. That tells the judge, this lawyer is willing to bend the rules. This lawyer is willing to mislead. This lawyer can't be trusted. Now, all of this is happening while Blanche is serving as Attorney General, while he's running the Justice Department, while he's supposed to be the example for all federal prosecutors. And it's getting worse. A federal magistrate judge in Illinois recently said the Justice Department, under Blanche's leadership, committed a clear violation of a sealing order. A sealing order is when a judge says documents are confidential, they're sealed. Nobody can talk about them publicly. Blanche and Kash Patel, the FBI director, apparently discussed sealed documents from a case at a press conference in public in front of reporters. The magistrate judge was furious, said the remarks about sealed documents were beyond what the court permits, said Blanche specifically overstepped. This is the Attorney General of the United States violating court orders, breaking rules, doing things judges have explicitly told him not to do. It's one thing for a private defense lawyer to push the boundaries. It's another thing entirely for the top law enforcement officer in the country to do it. But the thing that's really shaken up Trump's legal position is the witness flip in the classified documents case. This is a game changer. There was a key witness in Trump's defense, someone who had originally backed up Trump's version of events, who had said things that helped Trump, who was part of Trump's narrative, and then that witness recanted, changed their story, flipped, decided to tell prosecutors the truth. And now that testimony is actually damaging to Trump. Now that testimony is helping prosecutors prove their case. The witness flip forces Blanche and Trump's legal team to scramble, to change their strategy, to figure out how to handle a witness who was supposed to help them but is now working against them. Analysts say this flip could cause a real problem for Trump. It could expose earlier statements as misleading. It could force Trump's lawyers to change their entire approach. And that's the pattern. Everywhere Trump's legal team turns, they're running into problems. Judges are rejecting their arguments. Witnesses are flipping. The strategy isn't working. The defense is crumbling. Let me lay out what this all means because the implications are enormous and they're only getting more serious. First, Blanche's credibility is destroyed. A judge literally told him he's losing all credibility. When a judge says that in a major criminal case, it's catastrophic, that judge will never trust Blanche again. That judge will scrutinize everything Blanche does from that point forward. And that judge is essentially telling the jury, this lawyer is not credible. This lawyer is not trustworthy. You should question everything he says. Because if the judge doesn't believe him, why should the jury? This is devastating for Trump. Trump needed Blanche to be credible. Trump needed the jury to trust what Blanche was saying. But instead, the judge undermined Blanche's credibility before the jury's eyes. The judge basically said, this guy is not telling you the truth. Be careful about what he says. This is not something you recover from in a trial. Once a judge says you're losing credibility, you're basically finished. Your effectiveness is destroyed. And now Blanche is Attorney General. Now he's supposed to represent the Justice Department, supposed to represent the United States government. But judges don't trust him. Multiple judges have called him out. Multiple judges have questioned his credibility. Multiple judges have found his arguments unconvincing. How is he supposed to represent the government with integrity when judges don't believe him? How is he supposed to enforce the law when he keeps violating court orders? How is he supposed to lead federal prosecutors when he keeps getting publicly humiliated in courtrooms across the country? The answer is he can't. He's compromised. He's lost the respect of the judiciary. And that's not something you can get back with a press conference or a social media post. That's permanent damage. Second, the witness flip in the classified documents case is a catastrophe for Trump's defense. This isn't a minor setback. This is a fundamental collapse of Trump's strategy. When your case is built on a particular narrative, when your defense relies on certain witnesses, and then those witnesses recant and flip to the other side, your case falls apart. It's that simple. The witness who was supposed to help Trump is now helping prosecutors. The witness who was supposed to back up Trump's version of events is now telling the truth. And that truth is damaging to Trump. Prosecutors now have insider testimony from someone who knows Trump, someone who knows what happened, someone who was involved. And that person is now saying Trump is guilty. Trump's defense was wrong. The prosecutors are right. That's incredibly powerful testimony. That's the kind of testimony that can convince a jury. That's the kind of evidence that can result in a conviction. And now Trump's legal team has to completely rethink their strategy. They have to figure out how to respond to this witness flip. They have to prepare for trial knowing that this witness will testify against them. They have to deal with the fact that Trump's version of events is not credible anymore because an insider is saying Trump is lying. Third, judges across the country are losing faith in Blanche and Trump's legal strategy. It's not just one judge in one case. It's multiple judges, different courts, different cases, all expressing skepticism about Blanche's arguments, all questioning his credibility, all finding his legal positions unconvincing. When you've got judges from different courts all saying the same thing, that's a pattern. That's a real problem. That's not just one judge being unfair or biased. That's multiple judges across the judicial system saying this legal strategy doesn't work. These arguments are not sound. This approach to defending Trump is fundamentally flawed, and that's devastating information for Trump. That tells him his legal defense is in trouble, that his lawyers are not effectively representing him, that the system is rejecting his arguments. George Conway said, Blanche has nothing substantive to say in Trump's defense. Nothing substantive. That's another way of saying Blanche's arguments are not based in law. They're not based in facts. They're just talking points. They're just things Trump wants him to argue, even though they don't actually work in court. That's the fundamental problem. Trump won't let his lawyers argue what the law actually supports. Trump insists on arguing his version of events. Trump insists on attacking witnesses. Trump insists on doing things that judges have told him not to do. And that forces Blanche and other Trump lawyers into the position of making arguments they know won't work. Arguments that judges will reject. Arguments that destroy their credibility. It's an impossible situation, and Blanche is stuck in it as Attorney General. Fourth, and this is the biggest one, the entire legal system is rejecting Trump's approach. When judges, witnesses, legal ethicists, and former prosecutors all look at what's happening and say, this doesn't work, this violates the rules, this is inappropriate, that's a sign that something fundamental is wrong. It's not just one person's opinion, it's the entire system saying no. Judges are saying no, witnesses are saying no, the rules are saying no, and Trump keeps trying to do the same things anyway. Trump keeps insisting on the same strategy. Trump keeps attacking judges. Trump keeps attacking prosecutors. Trump keeps trying to delay trials. Trump keeps refusing to follow court orders. And every time he does, every time he tries to bend the rules, judges shut him down. Witnesses flip, his credibility gets worse, his legal position gets weaker. This is a losing strategy. This is a strategy that only works if you have absolute power. Only works if the courts are subordinate to you. Only works if judges will do what you want. But that's not how America works. That's not how our system functions. Judges are independent. They don't take orders from the president. They don't do what the president wants just because he wants it. They follow the law, they uphold their oath, and when the president tries to violate the law, judges stop him. When Trump tries to break court orders, judges punish him. When Trump tries to mislead juries, judges call him out. And now Trump's legal team, with Blanche as Attorney General, is trying to use federal power to make courts obey, trying to use the Justice Department to undermine investigations, trying to use federal resources to help Trump. But judges keep stopping it. Federal magistrate judges are ruling against them. Judges across the system are rejecting their arguments. And that's going to keep happening. Blanche is not just a private defense lawyer anymore. He's the Attorney General. He represents the United States government, and he's been called out by judges for violating sealing orders, for breaking court rules, for doing things judges have explicitly told him not to do. That's worse than being an ineffective private lawyer. That's abuse of power as a government official. That's using federal authority inappropriately. That's the kind of thing that could result in impeachment, that could result in removal from office, that could result in criminal charges. Because unlike a private lawyer, when the Attorney General violates court orders, it's not just a personal problem, it's a constitutional crisis. It's the executive branch attacking the judicial branch. It's the top law enforcement officer of the country breaking the law. And Congress has the power to do something about it. Congress can investigate, Congress can hold hearings, Congress can impeach, Congress can remove him from office. And if Blanche keeps violating court orders, if he keeps breaking sealing orders, if he keeps doing things judges have told him not to do, Congress is going to have to act. The system is going to have to defend itself. The walls are closing in on Trump's legal strategy. Judges are rejecting it. Witnesses are flipping on it. The courts are shutting it down. And Trump's own Attorney General is making it worse by violating court orders and breaking the rules. The whole thing is unraveling. The whole defense is falling apart. And there's nothing Trump or Blanche can do to stop it because the system itself is rejecting what they're trying to do. Judges don't believe them. Witnesses are telling the truth instead of supporting Trump. And the law keeps getting in the way. That's not a temporary problem. That's not something that's going to get better. That's a structural problem. That's the system working the way it's supposed to work. It's designed to stop exactly this kind of abuse of power. It's designed to prevent one person from turning government into a tool for personal purposes. And it's working. The system is working. It's slow. It's frustrating. It takes time, but it's working. And Trump and Blanche are losing every day. Every court appearance, every witness flip, every judge's ruling. They're losing, and they're going to keep losing. The next move is going to be critical, and we'll be right here to break it all down.